Welcome to Downshift. My name is Matt and I've spent the week with Hyundai's Sonata N-Line. This is their mid-size, mainstream, kind of the last performance-oriented option in the class. Of course, you've got Toyota's Camry XSE, which is down about 60 horsepower on this thing, and then there's Honda's Accord Sport, which is down close to 90 horsepower on this thing. So we're going to talk about everything that you need to know, all the good, all the bad, and everything in between with the new Sonata N-Line. Let's get into it. First thing, we'll cover what's new for 2025 here. Now, last year's 2024 was a pretty heavy refresh year for the Sonata, but for 2025, they've updated a couple things. Like, for one, they've brought back the entry SE trim for 25, and the N-Line cars now get rear air vents in the cabin, which is pretty sweet. And the convenience package that was sold in addition to or added onto the SEL is now its own trim, kind of. And then we'll talk about the competitive space. What does this Sonata compete against? Well, there's segment benchmarks like the Honda Accord, which my parents just bought. And again, we'll have a head-to-head video with this and that. And there's also the Toyota Camry, and you could even say, well, you could say, and you would say, the Kia K5. And then what's under the hood is important here for this N-Line because it builds on the 2.5 naturally aspirated four-cylinder that's in the base car. The base car is making just under 200 horsepower and just over 180 pound-feet. But for the N-Line that we have here, it takes things up a notch by adding a turbo. That means 290, almost 300 horsepower and 311 pound-feet of torque. It's rated for about 27 mpg according to the EPA, but we got over 32 mpg on our Lakeshore Loop fuel economy test. You can also get a hybrid Sonata, but we have a dedicated video on that on the channel already, so check that out. And when it comes to the drivetrain, now you have front-wheel drive for everything, including our N-Line. You can get all-wheel drive, but only on the SEL, so you can't get all-wheel drive for the hybrid or the N-Line here. There's also, interestingly, no CVTs on the Sonata, no matter what you get. You get an 8-speed automatic for your base, but you get an 8-speed dual-clutch transmission for your N-Line here, which is pretty cool. That's proper performance stuff added to an economy or mainstream sedan. So you'd love to see that. And of course, the hybrid even doesn't have a CVT. It's a 6-speed automatic. So that's pretty good. But back to the N-Line here. The N-Line here, of course, has revised suspension. You get slightly stiffer dampers, and you will feel that on the road. And we'll talk about that a little bit more behind the wheel later on. And then touching on the styling of the car. We'll go fairly quickly here, but overall, I think this is the best looking of the trio that we've talked about between the Camry and the Accord, at least for the N-Line here. You have a more embellished or more aggressive lower fascia here with some more aggressive grille intaking, but you do still have the split headlight thing. It's no longer catfish gradienting up into the hood, but you do have running lights that kind of gradient into the center a little bit, so they're more bright over here, over the projectors, and they kind of thin out over the middle. Overall, it's a pretty aggressive, almost kind of Tron look to it. There's a little bit of creasing in the hood, and we get around to the side, and we have almost a Mercedes AMG-esque front fender badge, and then we've got 19-inch N wheels. They're kind of a black satin or matte finish with a diamond cut profile, and they look really cool. And then you can see from the front here, you've got almost an embellished front splitter, and then some more embellished side skirts with some cutouts on the door and the typical Sonata whoosh over the rear hip. Black window treatments, black wing mirrors, and overall it looks pretty good. The profile is elegant, it's swoopy, and it looks expensive. But then as we come into the rear, this is something I always thought was kind of interesting with the Sonata. They have these strafes on the rear taillight casing, and then it kicks up into this rear kind of molded in lip spoiler. And this is kind of that digital pyramid taillight situation that we saw last year in the hybrid that we tested for the first time. But as we come around the rear and look down below, we've got a little bit more embellished, almost Audi RS6 or RS7 diffuser, hiding those quad tips, one for each cylinder. And as we check out the trunk, it's just this square button here. No power trunk on the N-Line, but you can get that on the Limited. It's not something that comes standard or you would expect from this class, so it's nice that the Limited brings that. But you do have a little pull here, so you don't have to get your hand all salty in the winter. But the blades are hidden in here, so you're not going to crush your cargo. You're looking at 16 cubic feet of space. It's slightly, not even a full cubic foot smaller than you'll get in an Accord, but you can drop the rear seats from back here, which is pretty nice. And you have a nice little additional cargo pockets behind the rear wheels. You lift the floor up, it's just some foam down here. There's no spare tire for the N-line, but overall 60-40 split from the rear. Nice big kind of geometric opening for the trunk. Definitely pretty practical. Then we'll check out the rear seats, starting with the door card. No window shades on this trim. I think you can get those on the Limited, so that would be pretty nice, but again, not something that I would expect from this class. But you do have this leatherette with some of the red stitching and detailing, kind of this dark chrome with a loop door handle. This loop door handle reminds me of a BMW 3 Series, but we have pretty decent room. I'll step in. I am 6'1" for reference, so I'll get in here. And I've got several inches of knee room in front of me, which is fantastic to see. We also do get climate vents back here and some USB-C charging, and overhead we have a panoramic roof. You can get that on the N-line here, as well as I believe the Limited and maybe SEL with convenience. But rear headroom is usually affected by a panoramic roof. Since we have these cutouts here, it's actually pretty decent. I'm sitting on a pretty puffy coat and I still have about an inch or maybe a half an inch of headroom above me. So that's great to see. And all of the suede and kind of N-line stuff continues into the rear here, which is also great to see. And then checking out the front seats, again, door card very similar. We've got our Bose speakers, quite nice. And then we do have, I thought, memory seat. No, we don't have memory seats. So no memory seats here. You also have this really nice kind of N embroidery in here, red piping, red stitching, gray suede or dark gray suede, which I think matches the exterior pretty well. It is 3-level heated. It is not 3-level cooled, and you do not get a heated steering wheel on the N-line here. But the seats themselves, pretty comfortable, and they look cool. And then as we take a look at the overall interior, the cabin design, this is again totally new for last year. So we've got some N-line specific touches that we didn't have. Again, the suede on the seats with some of the red stitching and piping. And we've got a red line that goes all the way across the dash, and it even encircles your start-stop button. And then you've got this kind of faux carbon fiber on the dashboard, which again adds that little sense of specialness. Your dash upper is also stitched, and it just looks pretty good. Your steering wheel is new, again for last year, and it's got this kind of like cutout down here at the bottom, so it's not a flat steering wheel, but it's also not totally circular, so it's an interesting shape. But overall, I mean, there's some scratchy plastics like in your center console here, but there's loads of storage because your gear selector has moved onto the stalk for the steering column. So you've got all this extra space for cup holders and all sorts of stuff. You do have a little bit of ambient light that comes through the cabin. And one of the things that I do like are these cup holders. So you've got a normal size cup holder in the back and then a bigger one in the front. So if you have a bigger water bottle, you can actually use it back or up here. You've got a storage area, wireless charger, sunglass area, but overall, nothing has creaked, nothing has rattled, and everything looks pretty cool. A little bit more special than you would get in a Camry XSE or a Honda Accord Sport. And then talking about the technology suite here in the Sonata, you're not going to get a head-up display in your N-line like you would on the Limited, but I think that's kind of okay because you have this huge fully digital instrument cluster. This is going to be standard on your SEL convenience, your N-line, and your Limited. Really, really nice. Lots of different customizability. Compass, driving assist information, trip information, all the usual stuff, and it looks good. It looks a little bit more expensive than it has in the past. You go over to your center screen, which is huge and really, really responsive. I like the graphics here. There's a little bit of additional functionality from like a pull down like you would have on your phone. You can get quiet mode if you want to dull the rear speakers, but you do have wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, and you're not going to have a 360 camera here. It's just a reverse camera, but it works pretty well. If you want a 360 camera, you're going to have to go up to the Limited. You're also not going to have a digital rear view mirror, but you will have a wireless charger down here, and the kind of mix and match semi-physical or physical climate controls and things for your heated seat and some of your climate stuff here. So overall, the tech suite has pretty much everything that you would want and need without maybe a little too many frills. But one of the things I thought was kind of cool is you got sports integration. So again, you can hook this up to the internet and then you can get like basketball scores. So just kind of cool. Keep track of things like that. If you've got a favorite team like the Bucks maybe, Bucks in 6, you can keep track of that in here. and your driver assist suite. This is the HDA system, so not the full HDAS system, but it still works pretty well. It keeps me centered in my lane pretty well. The adaptive cruise works pretty well, so it's still nice and helpful without being the full and most modern, robust system. And the last thing that we'll talk about is, of course, the price. Now, the N line for the Sonata starts at just over $35,000, and with destination, we're testing at $36,610. Now, again, this is, if you're going to compare it to like my parents' Accord Touring, that's the most expensive Honda that you can get. That starts at $39,000. So this is going to be a little bit more expensive than a Sport L Honda Accord, but significantly less expensive than a Touring. And again, it's going to be a little bit more expensive than a Camry XSE as well. But there's a lot of car underneath here and a lot of power underneath the hood, so let's go for a bit of a drive and talk about that. Hey guys, real quick, Matt here. Just wanted to say I hope you've been enjoying the video. If you have, would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it does go a long way in helping us get access to cars sooner and get access to manufacturer engineers so we can get more information on the cars and get you more information so you can make better decisions. So would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe, like, comment, the whole YouTube thing. But with that, let's get back to the video. Okay, Sonata N line. I'm using my drive mode tab. That isn't a tab, it's a button, but we are in sport. Ooh, wheel spin. No idea where red line is. No idea with this gauge cluster. Okay. DCT. Do some shifting. It's responsive on downshift. Shifts pretty well. Okay. I'm actually going to come out of sport so it doesn't keep snarling away at you. I use the word snarling a little generously. It's not the best sounding engine in the world, is it? You know, like the 2-liter turbo that you get in the N products, the Kona and the Elantra, and the Veloster, RIP to some of those, sounded good. And granted, it's the full N experience, so they've done a lot to like make the whole thing sound better, exhaust, etc. This is an N line, so they've kind of just added a turbo, more or less, to the 2.5, which is just kind of a chuggy workman's engine. So it's not super performant. I don't know. It makes lots of power, it just doesn't sound that great. But, you know, 290 horsepower, that's 60 more than you're gonna get with all-wheel drive in a Toyota Camry. And it's like almost 90 more horsepower than you're gonna get in a Honda Accord full stop. The thing is, that's a lot of power. It doesn't have the right diff up front. Again, this is not a full N product. But, you know, we saw as we launched, like, there's wheel spin. I'll come into this corner, I'll turn traction control off, because if I don't, it's going to be a little bit sloppy. But I'll come into this corner, decent hold, and I'm just going to get a little bit of wheel spin. So if I leave traction on, it's just going to cut power, and then I won't really be able to come out of the corner in a dynamic and flamboyant fashion, which I want to do. And if I turn traction off, it's going to spin the wheel. So it's, again, keeping in context, it is not an N product, it's an N line. But I still think, objectively and truthfully, this is the most sporty, the fastest, the most dynamic driving experience that you can get amongst the, I haven't driven the new K5, but against the Accord and the Camry. So this drives a lot more N-ish. The thing is, when you compare it to the Camry, this damping is a little bit firmer. Obviously, they've retuned it for the N line, so there's a little bit more busyness feel behind the wheel. But the steering is okay. It's not a huge amount of feel, but there's a decent weight to it. I feel like I'm doing something. I'm engaged with the car. The Camry drives a lot more generic, I guess you could say. The steering is pretty light. The ride is pretty comfortable, kind of wumpy, but like, you know, nice for someone who's just commuting in a hybrid that just wants to get great fuel economy. I think the best all-around driver is the Accord, just based on that 2-motor Honda hybrid system. It's just uber refined. I mean, it's not the most exciting and flamboyant and like rah-rah in your face experience that you would get here. If you want that, you probably want to look at the Sonata N line. But if you just want like a borderline luxury experience, really smooth power application, really refined cabin, you know, almost like Acura Lexus levels of of like luxury, just driving experience, I think the Honda is the best driver full stop. But if you want the most like racy experience, then here in the N line, I think that's what you would get. But overall, I mean, it's a pretty decent package. I would like to see maybe a heated steering wheel. I don't expect cooled seats on an N line, but overall, I mean, I think this definitely scratches an itch for people. It does have more power, so it backs up the looks, and it does look really cool. I love the Portofino gray with some of the accenting. It's not overdone, at least not in this spec, but you have a little tiny bit of like a whisper of a front splitter. You've got some side skirts, you've got quad tips where maybe a bit much, but it looks racy, it looks cool, and it looks fun. And then you get into the cabin and then it looks like this too. You've got the N seats with the red stitching and the suede, and like, there's an element of specialness behind the wheel here that is not necessarily what you're gonna get in some of the rivals. So overall, whoops, that's not the right button. Sport, down the gears, DCT, left-hander, good hold. If you don't like just totally mat it coming out of a corner, it'll pull you through. The differential's not bad, it's just not N good. But that N differential in those Elantra Ns and Kona Ns of the past was magical. But this is fast, and I'm having a good time, and it gets great fuel economy when you want to back off. The DCT is fun. It makes sense here, unlike in the Santa Fe. So I guess overall what I'm trying to say is if you want something a little bit more racy, a little bit more fun, a little bit more maybe juvenile, this is a good car. It rides good. It still does all of the great things that the Sonata does. It's really comfortable, it's practical. It's a little less comfortable and a little bit less maybe practical than like a hybrid or like a normal Sonata, but it definitely has that flamboyance and that fun that you might be looking for. So thank you to Hyundai for letting us have a go in your Sonata N line, and thank you to you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Make sure you stay tuned for our Sonata versus Accord video coming to the channel soon. We'll see you then.